There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people, and they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, you know, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually, if you're going for an operation of some form or other, there'll be often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimizing being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much. Because Ozempic tells you to stop eating. It makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say 4 weeks before surgery, your 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course, it's discriminatory, because you have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello, it's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out, how has Kemi Badenoch come out fighting? What is the stupidest thing that pro-Palestinian activists have done so far? And who is being freckle-phobic? I'm Josh Owen. Tonight I'm joined by the Yoda and Luke of the comedy circuit, Simon Evans and Adam Kumas, to take you through Tuesday's top stories. This is Headliners. But before tomorrow's news, let's go to tonight's headlines with Katie Bowen.
Josh, thank you and good evening. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Breaking news out of Canada this evening. 15 people have been injured after a Delta plane carrying 80 passengers flipped as it landed at Toronto Pearson International Airport. Footage shows the plane flipped entirely upside down. Of those 15 injuries, 1 child and 2 adults are critically injured, according to regional paramedic authorities. Toronto's Pearson Airport said it was aware of an incident involving a Delta plane arriving from Minneapolis and that emergency teams are currently responding. The airport also said earlier that it was dealing with high winds and extremely cold temperatures following a snowstorm over the weekend. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada says it is deploying a team of investigators following the crash. All passengers and crew have been accounted for, the airport added in a statement on X. Sir Keir Starmer has said that the future of Ukraine is an existential question for Europe as a whole and is vital for Britain's national interest, as he called for a US backstop to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again. Speaking after a summit of European leaders in Paris this afternoon, the Prime Minister reiterated that he is prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground in Ukraine if there is a lasting peace agreement. Sir Keir Starmer confirmed that he will travel to Washington, D.C. next week to meet with President Trump.
Europe must play its role, and I'm prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground alongside others if there is a lasting peace agreement. But there must be a US backstop, because a US security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again. So I will go to Washington next week to meet President Trump and to discuss what we see as the key elements of a lasting peace.
Well, just briefly on that story, a European Union official has said a short time ago that it was agreed at the meeting in Paris today that leaders were ready to give Ukraine security guarantees depending on the level of American support, but it would be dangerous to conclude a ceasefire without a peace agreement at the same time. More on that soon. An update from the Vatican now. Pope Francis remains in hospital, but he is in a stable clinical condition and does not have a fever, a statement released this evening has said. Earlier, doctors had to change treatment for the Pope's respiratory tract infection to tackle what they called a complex clinical situation. The 88-year-old pontiff has been suffering from a respiratory infection for more than a week and was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on Friday. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to Headliners, your first look at the best of tomorrow's newspapers with the best of today's comedians. First things first, we're going to see what we have on the front pages. The Daily Mail, Kemi, it's time to get off our knees and start fighting for Western values. The Daily Telegraph, Germany rejects PM's Ukraine peace plan. And The Guardian, Starmer, US backstop vital to deter future Russian attacks on Ukraine. So more front pages in a few minutes. Simon, hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Josh.
And how is this Daily Mail?
Yes, the headline about Kemi's speech at the Ark.
That's where you were. That's why you're wearing that jumper.
That's right, absolutely, yes. It was breezy in the hall. I was there, although I didn't get there early enough to see Kemi. She kicked things off at about 9:30 a.m. and I arrived around lunchtime and just got tucked into the buffet. But as she says, it's time to get off our knees, pick a part of the anatomy on which we've been resting and start fighting for Western values. It was about a 15-minute speech. You can watch it on YouTube. It's probably worth watching it in its entirety if you're interested in her
do it after the show,
direction. Yeah, and it is pretty sturdy defence of British values. It echoes people like Douglas Murray and his rhetoric, and Jordan Peterson, of course, who has been the driving force of the Ark, which is for the something for responsible citizenship, but is broadly speaking a right-wing talking shop. And she restates what I suppose might have been considered to be the conservative values that might have kept them in power if they'd actually demonstrated any real commitment to them in the last few years, because this is what everyone is saying with some force, that she was part of a government which completely failed to uphold those values and to emphasise them and to prioritise them, talk is cheap.
Yeah, well, this is it exactly. As it says in here, she said, conservatives are the guardians of Western civilization. Well, they let the dogs through the door or whatever you want to
Yes, they let the cat flap a bit too widely open.
Exactly.
Yes,
the values are under threat here. Of course, I'm not saying that Labour are the guardians, but they have obviously not done their job particularly. Do you think this is enough to make people maybe start trusting Conservatives a little bit more, Adam?
Absolutely not. I mean, I mean, you had, 14 or 16 years? Like, save it for 2029, Kemi. Like, you're out. These guys have been in for, less than a year. Let's... talk is cheap. I mean...
The thing is, she cannot save it until 2029 because she'll be out quite soon if she's not careful. They're polling dreadfully. They've been overtaken by Reform, and Starmer is quite openly regarding Reform as the main challenge to his second term at the moment. And so she does have to come out fighting. And this is the kind of talk that is most likely to convince Reform people.
Do you agree with her, Simon? Do you think we are at a sort of turning point of Western culture?
Well, I might have said she was over-egging it, or at least just playing to the gallery and singing to the choir or whatever, preaching to the choir a few weeks ago. But there has been a sense since Vance's speech in Munich, and of course just the general sort of extraordinary momentum that Trump has built up in the first few weeks, that we have reached that point where... Yeah, a turning point. A lot of people are saying it's the end of the long 20th century, that every so often, as Kissinger said, apparently I'm not somebody who quits Kissinger, but I've seen this said, every so often somebody comes along who forces people to confront the fact that they've slid into a complacent assumption of facts which have changed. Facts have changed, and America's relationship with the West, generally its guardianship of Europe as bastions of the West, is no longer to be taken for granted.
Yeah, she's got a lot of stick here, Adam, also saying that some cultures are better than others. It's only contentious to say this because honesty has become impossible.
Yeah,
she said it a few months ago and everybody kicked off then, but she's right. Some cultures are better than others.
But I think, I'd stand on it a bit more and just say my culture's better than yours. I mean, that's what anyone would say from any culture. Because I'm British, I'd say my culture is better than yours, and if I was from a different culture, I'd be saying the same.
But we're not allowed to say that in Britain. That's the point.
Just,
She managed to stick one decent punch on Starmer's snout as well about the taking the knee, which I thought was long overdue, that he really should have been held up for that because it was absurd and pathetic. And she says that's weakness, not liberalism. That's not liberalism, which has nothing to defend itself. That is weakness. And I think she was correct.
Yeah,
so I'll give her that one.
I think a lot of people, unfortunately, were guilty at the time of that.
Yeah.
So I should just say, this is Kemi Badenoch. She was at the speaking at the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship Conference in central London. ARC is an organisation funded by the lead investors in GBNews. So we just have to point that out because we don't want to be like, it's the most amazing thing. I mean, I am going to pop along tomorrow.
I would say it's in the XL, which is in what I still think of as the Docklands. Yeah, although some people say that is the new central London, but that's another question.
You sold me with that talk of buffet. I was like, all right, OK, I'll go check it out. Let's have a look at the Telegraph here. First of all, at the top, Adam, two stories here. BAFTA's The Return of Cleavage and £2 pints. Is this Telegraph trying to get the Sun audience on side here?
Yeah, I mean, I've got one reaction to both of those, and I'll say it down camera. Nice. I'm happy. It's good. That's going to be good.
There's a few more stories later on which follow in that same vein, but
there is actually there is a serious story about one of the biggest movies of last year in America.
Cleavage-wise.
Was that Sydney Sweeney?
Sydney Sweeney. I like how you pretended not to remember.
I know how to type it. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
And because she's a very cleavagey person, and it just came out of nowhere, and it's like movie executives suddenly discovered that having a bit of cleavage in movies and a bit more pay dividends at the box office, and we are thus seeing.
Yeah. Well, there's also there's sex workers and transsexuals are jostling for position at the BAFTAs and the Oscars as well. There seems to be a lot of sex on the menu.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. Maybe our population will increase organically. So there is some other news there. Adam, what else are they going with?
Yeah, so there's a few stories here on Telegraph. The first one is Germany rejects PM's Ukraine peace deal. So this is coming from the Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Basically rejecting Keir Starmer's plea to sort of send troops over to Ukraine to sort of initiate an American sort of backstop to sort of end this conflict, he was sort of stood up during and said, I actually feel a little irritated by this. We don't know what's going on.
But he said it in a German accent.
He did it with a German accent, yes, exactly.
But at least he didn't burst into tears.
He burst into tears. So yeah, this is interesting. I think this is. So when I read the story, the first thing that came to me was sort of Trump's rhetoric of saying, like, Europe needs to do more and pay its way in NATO and needs to actually step up. And Starmer seems to have been like, right, look, the big dog's in charge now. Let's start doing this. And Germany's like, no, we don't want to do this. And I don't know. He seems to be sidestepping or tiptoeing, and he just doesn't want to do what needs to be done. Maybe.
No, exactly. There's an interesting story here at the bottom about foreign shovel attacker cannot be deported. This is one of the Daily Telegraph's daily stories, insane stories of our immigration system, where a Slovakian was jailed over a shovel attack from a woman, and he says he's now been rehabilitated after being in jail for 15 months. I'm sorry, if you've taken part in a shovel attack against a woman and you don't belong to the UK, just be kicked out.
I like the way you're using the term shovel attack now as if it's a well-known form or genre of aggression.
Yeah. We all know what shovel attacks are.
A shovel attack.
Well, it's much harder to get knives on Amazon now. So
you're right to point out that the Telegraph have clearly coordinated, choreographed, prepared. They've got their ducks in a row on this one. This is a concerted effort by them to produce a new story every day, which is building up some momentum.
Yeah.
And we're beginning to understand just the extent to which the ECHR is preventing us from having a reasonable response.
And it should be said it's the interpretation of the ECHR, rather these are British judges who are using the interpretation, one of the, I think, Article 4 about the family right, and then sort of misusing that.
Yes. And well, the big question is, are they struggling to understand and correctly interpret legislation, or are they biased themselves? Are they activists? And there's plenty of evidence being sort of circumstantial evidence being produced to suggest that we have got a long march has taken place through that institution, like all the others.
And there's certain judges who seem to be repeatedly putting this stuff through. Let's also go to The Guardian, Simon, which has also more on Ukraine, but also a very sort of touching photo.
Yes, Starmer and Macron, and there are various angles taken on that. That's a particularly happy one, The Guardian have used. There's another paper. The Times has them looking a lot more statesman-like, and Starmer looking just ever so slightly effeminate there.
Well, but this one is particularly, there's a lot of flesh touching.
A lot of grasping. It is interesting trying to unpick and understand what's going on. Things are moving at a very fast rate at the moment with the negotiations. We have also the awareness that, as we'll be coming on to later, one of the Telegraph economics correspondents has written a long, detailed account of what he thinks are the sort of reparations, virtually, that Trump is demanding from Kyiv. And
very interesting. Don't go anywhere, anybody.
Yeah.
It is genuinely very interesting, but yes. But Adam, what about this at the bottom here, where Zelensky's just rightly so say, look, because they've gone to Saudi Arabia, Russia and America, and they've not invited Ukraine along.
So it's interesting, because I know we are one of the stories later does sort of talk about this in more detail, but basically it seems like Zelensky's been put in a very tough position. I think he's backs up against the wall, and the last thing he said is, look, we just want to be in the room. We want to be involved. Please give me a bit of dignity. I want to be involved somehow, please.
Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have died, have sacrificed their lives. Yeah. And it's so utterly disrespectful to not they're not even a factor in this discussion. It's disgusting. Yeah. Anyway, time now for more of Tuesday's front pages. The Times: Ukraine needs US safety pledges, PM to tell Trump. The Daily Express: 3 out of 4 OAPs living in cold homes. And the Daily Star: the age of the sausage. So, Times, we've done Ukraine. Let's have a little look here at dementia. Please, Adam.
Right. So I will say this, and I do apologise if I'm sort of treating this story with maybe the sort of seriousness it deserves. But according to a very sort of in-depth study published by the Lancet Healthy Longevity, it seems as if doing simple things with your relatives or loved ones, like do simple tasks like making cups of tea or having them get dressed, might
transferring this bank money into my account.
Yeah, might be helpful. I mean, who would have guessed that getting dementia patients to do anything might be beneficial for them?
Giving them a purpose, a task.
Yes, absolutely, rather than just letting them sit there and
build this wall.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like common knowledge. I mean, it's nice that I guess the studies prove this, but you should be helping your relatives to do.
It's incredible, actually, isn't it? Because this programme costs, I think, £350 per person, yet it saves £9,000 if it does actually keep them out of the home, Simon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know it's one of the major, the term black hole is used an awful lot by the government, but this is one of the extraordinarily expensive aspects of social care.
And it's going to get
anything
worse.
that can be done to keep people out of hospital for even a matter of months is wonderful.
Yeah. Invite them on late-night panel shows.
Yeah, absolutely. Repetitive tasks, however dismal it sounds, do just keep you ticking over and having some sort of sense of what comes next. It's very, very difficult, of course, to understand dementia if you don't experience it yourself, which is why I'm beginning to understand it to some extent, as I managed to actually leave the hob on and boil a pan dry recently, which is one of the very first signs, they say. So, I'm hoping to remain as the GB News correspondent on that front.
Just a very quick one. If there's a very good film that depicts the deterioration of the father, Anthony Hopkins.
Yes.
Very good film, very eye-opening. So if anyone is sort of interested in that.
It's interesting. One of the speeches I did see at Art today and got there in time for was Peter Thiel down the line talking by satellite to Jordan Peterson about some of the areas in which no progress has been made in science, medicine for decades, and dementia really is one of those. Considering how urgent it is, it's extraordinary how little progress has been made. I think studies like this are interesting, but really we should be chucking untold billions at this, absolutely shoveling money into it.
And is costing us untold billions as it is, yeah. Let's go to the Daily Express then, which is OAPs living in homes. So this is just the winter fuel payment going on. Is this going to be the last article we see about it as we go into spring?
Yeah, I would think so. And there's 3 out of 4 OAPs living in cold homes, which is emotive and sad, but perhaps lacks statistical hard edges.
How cold?
Yeah.
I live in a cold home.
Exactly. Some people quite like cold homes, But anyway, up to 9 million pensioners were left shivering at home last month. I'm sorry, it's not really. It's not really a news story. It's gossip.
It's emotion.
Yeah.
And finally, the Daily Star, Adam, for more gossip.
Surprising, Gen Zs are sort of growing their backbones and they're eating meat again. That's surprising, As long as it's in date, I presume, because there was another story about...
Well, they say it's surprising here, but it seems to be to do with the cost of living crisis because it's cheaper, isn't it?
Bangers are rather than steaks.
Meat is cheaper. Meat is cheaper than having a vegan diet.
In defence of people who do eat sausages, normal sausages probably have less meat than vegan hot dog sausages. They're so low quality. So.
Well, that is all the front pages done, but come back to find out what is the stupidest thing that your tax money is being spent on. There are some pretty insane things. Find out in 2.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lately, it's getting much better. People getting more educated in terms of overall well-being of the skin health rather than temporary aesthetic treatments. Because most of the treatments in aesthetic, it doesn't change the texture of the skin. It just gives like volumetric result or remove the wrinkles temporarily.
So what are the most popular treatments that people are after?
According to a statistic report, first is anti-wrinkle, then dermal filler, then energy-based device. Yeah. But lately, biostimulators also became very popular. And
what do you mean by biostimulators?
Biosimulator, any substance that can change the texture of the skin, or like it will lead to postpone the aging process, or proliferate more collagen, increase the elasticity of the skin, such as polynucleotide or exosome, or different vitamins and minerals in the form of mesotherapy considered as a biostimulator.
Turkey's a particularly popular destination because the costs are so much lower. There have also been a lot of horror stories about what can happen when things go wrong, even people dying from post-surgery complications. What would you advise people?
Choose as a practitioner or surgeon very carefully and never prioritize price over quality. This is your face after all, your body after all. And mistakes can be reversible. it can be irreversible. And sometimes it's not like a booking a restaurant or hotel. It's a sensitive matter that can affect their confidence and skin and body for life.
Yeah.
So they need to choose very wisely. They need to search what kind of methodology that particular surgeon they perform the treatments. Are they using any safety tools?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's start with the Telegraph, Adam, and a winning strategy for cutting down on violent crime. Smoke a joint.
Yeah, that seems to be the solution. So yeah, the headline reads: drug dealer allowed to stay in Britain after promising to only smoke cannabis. That sounds fair enough, doesn't it?
That's nice of him.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Like, I'll only do one illegal thing. I'm not going to do the bad illegal thing. So this is a Jamaican dude was basically came to Britain in 2000, was issued with deportation after being jailed for 3 years and 4 months for 3 separate accounts of supplying Class A drugs.
That's the hardcore stuff.
That's the hardcore stuff.
That's the Simon Evans stuff.
Yes, yes. And then so basically, and then the judge basically ruled on the ground, and thanks to the ECHR, said, look, okay, if we deported you, that would be unfair on your children. And he goes, look, I promise I won't do it again. I'll just smoke weed. And the judge was like, sounds fair. Yeah. So, you know, it's like a weird, like a mate system. Like, I'll give you mates rates, or maybe the judge has got a hook up to the drugs. I don't know what's going on. Allegedly, I don't know. This is interesting for me because I think, you know, when I think about the ECHR, and I think, obviously, it sounds good in principle. It's obviously set up to sort of, you know, to give people the freedom.
We set it up. The UK set it up post-World War II.
Yeah, you know, freedom from torture, freedom from expression, freedom for privacy, which is very good. But then, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, it's a lot of these judges' interpretations of these laws are allowing huge amounts of abuses of the system, and we're seeing these sort of loopholes being glaring.
Well, speaking of loopholes, Simon, it seems to be another loophole is if you get arrested in this country and you're a foreign national, just get someone pregnant.
Yes, well, this chap has got 3 young children in the UK with his wife, and that has been considered enough. And you're right. I mean, he's not offering his smoking marijuana as a negotiating tactic. He's brought it down to that.
He's literally said, "I'm going to do whatever."
But I am going to do it. He has said, "I am going to do that." I mean, that wasn't what he was doing time for, of course. And I mean, I don't know. I'm 59 years of age, and I do think to myself, have I changed? If I were 23, I was reading about this chap, would I think this was of any real significance? I would probably go, oh, let the old geezer have his spliff. It doesn't really hurt anyone. And I do tend to consider, I think that is probably that. I overlook that. So but if he should have been deported anyway for selling hard drugs, that's the point. It's the joke element is about him smoking spliffs at home and agreeing to keep it down to that. Yeah. But the point is he should have been deported. And, well, it is, again, part of the Telegraph's campaign to bring these things to our attention. And it is gathering momentum, as you say.
It's like, I'm not going to be a criminal, but I'll just be a little.
But interesting. Why can't he just say, "And I won't smoke weed"? Like, just pretend. Just lie. You could just say, "And I won't do that, Judge. Please don't deport me." It's the audacity.
Because he's honest, which is the kind of drug dealer that we want in this country.
Honest Sean McLeod. That's what they always called him when you went round for a rap.
Why? So, Simon, good news in The Sun as it manages to find the budget's black hole.
Yes, this is the sort of parallel campaign which is going on next to the ECHR abuses, is the wastage. Basically, it's Britain's version of Doge, of course. Doge is wiping out billions in US aid, and Britain has found that we're spending £3 and 2 shillings and 2.8p on a prawn farm or something. Well, it's quite a lot, 15 billion per year on overseas aid, which, yes, I mean, if we were to just stop that would pay for the significant increase we need in the Ministry of Defence spending. Some of these are probably not as bad as others. They've pointed to £133,000 to study shrimp health in Bangladesh.
It's important. It's important.
It's not a huge amount of money by public purse standards. 60 grand goes to a quango called the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture. I mean, this is footling sums, but on the other hand, yes, it does all add up. The word gender comes up a lot, preventing gender-based disinformation in Kenya, 100 grand.
Which is a sort of oxymoron in and of itself.
Yes, and I mean, it's a good question whether these things are trans-adjacent or whether they're just trying to make sure that girls get to go to school. If it's the latter, I tend to support it, you know, broadly speaking. It's very hard to know until you drill into the
deliberate use of the word gender. There's no, for me, there's no way they're not using that word.
Well, there's one, a £30 million budget has been set aside for enhancing gender outcomes in Nepal. Now, that feels to me like deliberately provocative language to use in Nepal. I mean, what are you trying to say? Just speak the King's English and maybe we'd have a chance of understanding whether the money was well spent or not.
What about this? £500,000 going on 15 electric vans for Albanian prisons to get them closer to net zero.
Well, I mean, that's almost as important as the prawns, Josh.
Yeah.
So don't come for the Albanian vans, thanks. Yeah, this is interesting, isn't it? I think what's been great about what we've seen across the pond with Doge is that I think people in the UK are seeing some of the successes of that and going, we'd like a bit of that here. I'm a bit more sort of like, I wish that there was a bit more corruption in the sense of we're doing gender lectures in Kenya, but actually we're secretly getting secret minerals from the country. But I don't think it is. I think we genuinely are just doing gender lectures. It's a bit like Jack and the Beanstalk. We've come back with beans.
Yes, well, this is... I mean, it's insane when you're looking at the figures involved here and what they are going on. And as soon as the Doge thing started picking up steam, I was like, someone is obviously going to be finally having a look at this. And there is an argument, of course, soft power. There's also one that some of the money's going to create jobs in Albania, the idea being that if there are more jobs in Albania, then they're not going to come over or not want to come over to the UK. So there is...
Gee, Officer Krupke, no wonder I'm a drug dealer. There was no jobs in Albania.
Exactly. But yes, Kenyan gender lectures perhaps aren't really helping anybody out. Onto the Telegraph, Adam, where Trump overcharges on the bill.
Yes, so this is a very interesting story. So the headline reads, revealed Trump's confidential plan to put Ukraine in a stranglehold. This is Donald Trump essentially demanding $500 billion payback from Ukraine, which goes way past the US control over the country's critical minerals. This would include things like ports and infrastructure to oil and gas. And this is a huge ask from Ukraine, who's obviously been in tour. When reading the story, a line that sort of stuck out to me, that the terms that Trump has put on Ukraine are terms normally imposed on aggressor states defeated in war. And that really puts into perspective what he's asking. But basically...
It's worse than Versailles, even.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, it's almost as if, like, all that money we were doing, we weren't doing it because we thought Russia was doing a bad thing. We want to own you now. Pay up. It was almost like bit of a loan shark, I guess. But you never know with Trump. Is he doing this as like is he projecting? We know when he did it with he sort of said he was going to put tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and then suddenly he got them to basically do something. Basically put some troops on these borders to stop the supply of fentanyl coming in. Then he paused it. You never know what he's doing. Is this a negotiation tactic? We know he's with the art of the deal and everything else, or does he seriously just want all that money? I mean, Ukraine. It's between a rock and a hard place, really, isn't it?
Well, this is it. And first of all, it seems like not that much money. He's claiming that $300 billion has been spent already. It's actually more like 170, I think, and 60 billion of it has been spent on US weapons. So there is that to factor in. But it's interesting, Simon, that it was kind of Zelensky who invited this in the first place, right? By saying, which was actually quite a clever strategy, saying, we'll give you rights to our minerals, and then that gives America a stakehold because where these minerals are actually close to the Russia border. So then Russia's less likely to invade in the future. It made sense until now. This has happened.
Yes,
he's called his bluff.
Yes. I mean, you've explained the story very well there.
That's not my job. My job should have been to... Simon, could you explain this story? I'm sorry, that was... I failed as a host there.
No, I mean, you're right. And I think you're both right. I think also that Adam is right into saying that this is likely to be the first sort of negotiating round, and Trump has demonstrated that he has one major tactic, which is to put the fear of God into you with his demands so that you are enormously grateful and relieved when he backs down to what would otherwise have been considered a big win for him in the first place, you know. Yeah. It's called anchoring, apparently. But it's a difficult one to read this. I mean, I'm sure the guy has mastered the facts. Who's written it, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, who's a very experienced correspondent. But there does seem to be a degree of muddle as to what is being demanded for what has already been done by America and what is being demanded in order for America to remain guarantors of Ukrainian sovereignty going forward. I think that's clearly what Zelensky is really after, and that's where the negotiation will get heated, because if they want America to remain as guarantors, then Trump has something significant in his gift with which he can hope to achieve these terms. If he's just saying for what's already been achieved, then I don't think he's going to get it. Yeah,
well, there we go. Right, we're halfway and we've kept our powder dry. Come back to find out why there are no openly gay imams, and is Trump a fan of Andrew Tate? Find out in 2.
Hi there and welcome back to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's staying cold for the time being, but increasingly windy at the same time, with outbreaks of rain and snow for some, although dry for many others as high pressure sits just to the east, and we've got this increasing southerly airflow. With the cold air in place, weather fronts will move in overnight, bringing increasingly wet weather for Northern Ireland, eventually western Scotland, a few dribs and drabs of rain for Wales and the southwest, and it's generally cloudy in the west. Patchy cloud in the east as well, but in between a slice of clear and frosty weather to wake up to on Tuesday. Temperatures in 1 or 2 shelter spots down to -2 or -3 Celsius. But it's a real mixed bag Tuesday morning because it's relatively mild in the far west, and we've got this rain moving through Northern Ireland, pushing into western Scotland, bumping into that cold air, and that means there could be some freezing rain in places, icy surfaces for the southwest of Scotland, for example. But across central Scotland, well, it'll be falling as snow, and a few centimetres of snow could build up over the Grampians. So some wintry hazards about first thing for parts of Scotland. A quieter picture for much of England and Wales, with hazy sunshine first thing. A cold start for many, although across the southwest as well as parts of West Wales it is relatively mild compared with recent weather. And actually we keep the dry and bright weather throughout much of the day for England and Wales. It gradually pushes north so that the rain and snow fizzles out across central Scotland. It turns drier across the UK, and it's going to be a little less cold in many places compared with recent days. But the true milder air isn't quite here yet. In fact, another spell of rain comes along early Wednesday across western parts of the UK. Drier towards the east, increasingly windy with the wind coming from the south, but there will be some sunshine in the east. And then watch this rise in temperatures by the time we get to the end of the week. In some spots, we could see highs of 15 or 16 Celsius.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's kick off with Tuesday's Express. And Adam, the motive for this terrible crime is a real mystery.
Yes, so this is from The Express. The headline reads, World's first openly gay imam shot dead in professional hit. So this is a very sad story. This is Muhsin Hendricks. He's sort of spoken about how some people were demanding his mosque to be shut down, calling it the gay temple. Obviously, I think anyone sort of watching the show, or anyone with a brain would know that Islam and anyone from the LGBT community, they do mix. That's very clear. And obviously, he's tried to set up this first openly gay mosque, and he unfortunately has been shot dead in what seems to be a targeted attack. So yeah, just very sad, really. It's just there's nothing. I mean, obviously, I think without like South Africa, we know as a country is very violent anyway. There's a huge amounts of crime there, but this is obviously something that obviously could have potentially been a positive movement, and now it's sort of seemed like it's put in place. I mean, my mind immediately went back to the gentleman who was shot dead in Sweden, Stockholm, a month or so ago for burning the Quran, and it just seems to be like anyone who seems to sort of step out of line for how Islam is perceived is killed.
Well, this is it. I mean, Simon, the argument would be that an openly gay imam is a very positive step in terms of some kind of level of reformation.
Yeah.
But is that impossible, do you think, with Islam? If there is going to be fear in terms of if this is something to do with him being targeted for being gay?
I mean, I'm not well enough versed in Islamic law to say for certain, but it seems to me fairly clear that the vast majority of Muslims and Islamic clerics are quite clear that homosexuality is not acceptable under Islam. So, and an imam, to be a gay Muslim, there are gay Muslims who believe that they are able to be, authentically faithful and also gay. But to be a gay preacher, it seems to be very unorthodox. Obviously, this is not justifying any sort of violent attack, let alone murder, and it seems absolutely to have been a hit, very deliberate. I mean, it's caught on video. You can watch it if you want to. Man gets out of the car, walks over, shoots him dead, and gets back in the car and drives off. But I don't quite understand how you can be a gay imam, given that Islam is completely clear on the orthodoxy on that issue, as far as I understand it.
Well, I mean, for example, homosexuality is in Christianity and in Judaism is technically against religious law. But
in Christianity, it's in the Old Testament. The amount of scripture that's against it, I think it's Leviticus or Deuteronomy or something. There is scripture against it, but there is also scripture against eating certain foods in the same month or something. There's all this kind of ridiculous stuff.
You have these laws,
there's no teaching from Christ, as I understand it. He never speaks about it. There's the cultural and traditional aspects of it, but of course, as you say, they have been reformed very gradually without any, I think anything remotely, as blunt and brutal as this has been.
But is that what I mean? Because we obviously in Judaism and you're not meant to draw God or anything like that. But the point is, I guess, that is it fear that is going to prevent a future imam now coming out and being gay and progressing the culture of Islam as well. This is why
of course, a huge amount of fear is weaponized in order to prevent any kind of deviation from what many people within Islam consider to be the only correct way to pursue it. I just don't know whether there's any conversation taking place within the powers that be within that religion as to whether or not this is a conceivable direction for reform.
No,
I don't need that there is.
Well, the Muslim Judicial Council of South Africa, it should be said, they have said that this his position as a gay imam was incompatible with Islamic teachings, but they have said they condemn his murder and in any acts of violence towards the LGBT community, which I think is good. I wish that they could chat to some of their co-religious in Australia. There's 50 organisations, Muslim organisations there, who've come out in defence of the two Muslim medics who said that they'd killed loads of Jews. So that's not great. Right, let's move on to the Telegraph next, Simon, with an equalities officer who struggles to understand equality.
Well, and apparently the Telegraph would have us believe that it's understandable. The NHS allowed transgender doctor to use female facilities on advice of equalities officer. That's the headline. But as you go further down, it seems that it's understandable that the equalities officer was simply not capable of understanding the law as it stood. It says this is an incredibly complex area of law that has quickly become highly specialised, according to Dr. Michael Furan, a legal academic at the University of Glasgow. He says the average EDI lead, that's the Equalities, Diversity and Inclusion lead, is simply not qualified to be setting policy without checking with a legal specialist. And that in itself rings alarm bells to me. The fact that this area of law has allowed it, that people have allowed it to become so absurdly complex that a equalities officer is not capable of saying whether or not two people should be sharing a changing room together. Yeah. I mean, there's a gravy train for the lawyers involved. There's obviously people who are trying to make it perhaps more legally complicated than it really needs to be.
Well, it was going to be very simple under the last Tory government when they were finally going to be sorting all this out. And then, of course, Rishi Sunak called an election before he did, and they should have put it through. It does seem very clear that there is a legal obligation to provide single-sex spaces under the workplace. We know that Stonewall and other organisations promoting gender ideology have been basically falsifying what the law is and saying what they think the law should be, Adam. And then you have here an equalities officer who obviously either ideologically captured themselves or just going along with what they've been told from Stonewall or whatever other
going what they've been told, but maybe also not wanting to rock the boat and just thinking what can I do will get me the least amount of heat from whatever side. Keep protecting their own back, maybe.
Which is why, even though now the argument has been sort of won or clarified a little bit more so, I think, Simon, than maybe you were saying, but this stuff is still in these institutions. These equalities officers, these DEI people, whatever it is, they're still misrepresenting the law. And there's a real problem until we go into, like, every single school, every single hospital and actually sort all of this out legally.
Root them out.
Root out, yes. Telegraph again with the only thing that I have in common with pro-Palestinian activists, Adam, which we both think the BBC is biased about Israel.
Yeah, so this is interesting, isn't it? The BBC attacked by pro-Palestinian activists. So they are saying that Palestinian Action, they've issued a statement saying that the BBC has basically been biased on Israel, but not condemning them enough. So it's like, so this is, I don't know, they basically, in 2023, in October 2023, Palestinian Action also claimed responsibility for vandalising the BBC, the broadcaster headquarters.
And what they did yesterday or today, they sort of, blood red paint or whatever.
Yes, so similar scenes to what we...
Smashed some windows.
Yeah, similar scenes to what we did, what we saw happening to certain banks last year, I think Barclays and things like that. So it seems to be vandalised. This is... Yeah, trying to get their name across. The fact that we're even giving it, I'm of the opinion of it's these people. The fact that I've even mentioned their name is giving them more oxygen than maybe they deserve. Maybe we should stuff it out, or
maybe they should be banned if they're leading to violence. I mean, there's a difference between protests and committing acts of violence and sabotage.
Yeah, I mean, I have no sympathy for it, obviously, and it's tiresome to see that there's no arrest been made. They're not looking likely to do so, I don't think. These, I think, is also the same organisation that slashed the portrait of Arthur Balfour, which was gone very quiet and nobody was arrested over. I suspect part of the thinking is what you're talking about, that they just would rather they were given minimal publicity and just went away. There are plenty of comments on the Telegraph own website suggesting that, as you obviously think, the bias goes entirely the other way at the BBC and that this is ridiculous because they believe that the BBC is pro-Palestinian in most of its coverage.
Which I guess would be the argument. The BBC would say, hey, we're kind of annoying both extremes, or what. I don't think I'm extreme. I just think that. But then anybody
psyop, maybe they're doing it.
But I would say that the argument is that pro-Palestinians are so mental and have such little connection to actual facts that unless they saw the BBC going, Israel is evil and committing genocide, then they're going to say the BBC is biased. That is the level of extremity that they go to. Yeah. But it is interesting how we're both... Yeah. We could have two protests going on outside the BBC at the same time. No, we think they're more biased. No, we do.
Yeah. So, lucky GB News studios in Leicester have had very little attack so far.
Simon, The Times has Trump coming out as a Tate fan.
Yes, I think they're called Tate Bros.
Is that what it is? I actually Googled it and I couldn't find what it is.
I think this is quite interesting, I mean, whether or not he genuinely regards Tate, Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan, who is now a significant Tate as well, whether they are considered to be part of the sort of the Trump insurgency, I don't know, or whether he just thinks that
they're claiming they are. The Tate Bros do say that they're the people who sort of got men into making America great.
The broosphere. Yeah. They have remained in Romania all this time. They've been released from jail, but they're released from house arrest, but they cannot leave the country. I'm amazed that somebody with as much wealth and bling as Andrew Tate hasn't had like a private helicopter swoop down and snatch him up and how has he not got out by now?
I don't, maybe they've been watched. There's some very serious allegations against them: trafficking, sexual misconduct, money laundering.
They've spent an awful. I will say, I hope it doesn't need saying, doesn't need announcing that I am not particularly, day-to-day monitoring the Andrew Tate feed and not enthralled to his charisma or his business acumen. But they do seem to be spending an extraordinarily long amount of time holding them under arrest without managing to bring charges or get the case underway.
Well, maybe there's so much evidence, so many videos to go through.
Maybe, or maybe Trump is right.
Well, one more section to go, and there are some great stories. Can you grow your teeth? And how has Playboy discovered if you go woke, you go broke? Find out in 2.
Looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, it's a mixed picture out there across Europe. Sunny spells for many, but also some outbreaks of rain, but turning colder in Greece. So there are some showers across Madeira and the Canary Islands, but brighter spells across much of Spain and into Italy, with a few showers around. But across Greece, we'll start to see temperatures falling away. So actually, as we head into the week, especially Thursday and Friday, it is going to be turning much colder, with temperatures really struggling here down in the single figures.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As we kick off 2025, many of us might be thinking about a bit of a wardrobe refresh, especially if you're over 50 and you feel like the high street doesn't quite cater to you.
Indeed. That's where our next guest, Mel Tillett, comes in. She's in the studio with us now.
Mel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I love that you are this accidental influencer. I love that you said that's the first time.
Yeah, it is. That's the first time I've heard it.
You can have that for free on
thank
TV.
you so much. It's quite true.
Tell us about your following. Obviously, an influencer that many people might typically think of would be someone in their teens, someone in their 20s, someone who's particularly social media savvy, using TikTok. Talk to us about your brand of influencer.
Well, our influencer, my kind of influence is over the older age group, the over 50s. For my business, I do a lot of live videos. I'll do them early in the morning at 7:30, which sounds ridiculous, but I know my ladies are up and about at that time having a cup of coffee or whatever that might be. And just being honest about day-to-day life. So my dogs are running about, my grandchildren are even sometimes in them, one thing and another. So it's just been purely by accident that I've got this really nice, loyal following, and I get lovely messages off ladies. I'll do things like, I'll tell them when I'm going for a mammogram, and I'll say, come on, everybody go for your mammogram.
That's brilliant.
All sort of health-conscious things. I've been a lot heavier than I am now, and I've slimmed down and lost some weight. I've been talking about that journey as well. And then ladies will ask me questions on the videos, and we chat about all sorts of different things. And now I'm getting messages every day, and people are loving the clothing ranges that we do. And it's just, I started off as a business, that's purely what I did, but it's turned out into this other, I get recognised places I go now, which is really weird.
It must be a huge benefit to your business as well.
We employ around about 50 people.
Wow.
And I'm quite open to my audience and saying, whilever you keep buying off us, whilever you're loving our products and our clothing, you're keeping 50 people in jobs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Freckle phobia in The Guardian, Adam.
Yes, exactly. So this is Julianne Moore, who I must say is a very attractive woman of her age. A great shock, Julianne Moore's children's book under review by Trump administration. So she wrote a book basically for children called Freckle-Faced Strawberry, and it's about a story about a girl who dislikes her freckles but learns to live with them. Now, I think we all know freckles is code for sex stuff, and that's the reason why it's been called up. But basically, I think this is one of those instances where it's been called up, like, quite rightly, by accident, with a blanket ban of all these sort of books. And she's put a long sort of sad post about it on Instagram, which are probably great for publicity.
Well, this is it, Simon, that she sort of say, oh my God, what kind of free speech nation do we live in? And then really it's just a book. They've been pulled for 1 week, isn't it? That's it. That's all it is.
Yes, I'm afraid to say it's escaped my attention previously, Freckle-Faced Strawberry.
One of the classics.
The plot sounds extraordinary, you know. She has freckles, but she learns to live with them. I mean, even by children's book standards, that's poor. I was going to strengthen that, but even at nearly midnight. But yeah, I mean, Julianne Moore, she was great in, doing the ironing, but I think I'd leave these alone.
Fair enough, right. Tuesday's Mail has Playboy learning a soft lesson, Simon.
Yes, this is a much more exciting story about literature. Playboy is returning to its roots after woke rebrand featured a Lizzo centerfold, transgender playmate and no nudity. This was back in 2017, just a month after Hugh Hefner died. His legacy was desecrated. His own son, Cooper, 26 years at the time, said it was the right thing to do. We're at a moment where gender roles are evolving, and so they went into... Lizzo, if you don't know, is the medically, pathologically obese singer and sort of icon of the body positivity movement. I've seen the picture of her. I mean, it really is... It's pushing it, even by body positivity standards.
You didn't read Freckle-Faced Strawberry, but you saw Playboy's.
I only read Freckle-Faced Strawberry for the articles. But,
Adam, are you happy that Playboy's back?
No, this is a silly story. I'm sick and tired of all these brands going, oh, we're going woke and then not back. It's just capitalism wins. We saw it with Bud Light. We're going to see it with Jaguar. It's just... Playboy hasn't been relevant since everyone got an internet connection in their house. So, get rid of it.
Well, I will defend it. I think it genuinely was a significant cultural moment, whether or not it can reattain those heights. Okay. But it's fabulous. It was a tremendously enjoyable combination.
The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. The Daily Mail, Kemi, it's time to get off our knees and start fighting for Western values. Daily Telegraph, Germany rejects PM's Ukraine peace plan. The Guardian, Starmer, US backstop vital to deter future Russian attacks on Ukraine. The Times, Ukraine needs US safety pledges, PM to tell Trump. And the Daily Express, 3 out of 4 APs living at cold homes. The Daily Star, the age of sausage. And Playboy... Oh, no, we don't have that one. Right, that's it for tonight's show. Thank you to my guests, Simon and Adam. I'm going to be back tomorrow with Kerry Marks and Paul Cox. If you're watching 5am repeat, then stay tuned for breakfast. Bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome back to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's staying cold for the time being, but increasingly windy at the same time, with outbreaks of rain and snow for some, although dry for many others as high pressure sits just to the east, and we've got this increasing southerly airflow. With the cold air in place, weather fronts will move in overnight, bringing bringing increasingly wet weather for Northern Ireland, eventually western Scotland, a few dribs and drabs of rain for Wales and the southwest, and it's generally cloudy in the west. Patchy cloud in the east as well, but in between a slice of clear and frosty weather to wake up to on Tuesday. Temperatures in one or two shelter spots down to -2 or -3 Celsius. But it's a real mixed bag Tuesday morning because it's relatively mild in the far west, and we've got this rain moving through Northern Ireland, pushing into western Scotland, bumping into that cold air, and that means there could be some freezing rain in places, icy surfaces for the southwest of Scotland, for example. But across central Scotland, well, it'll be falling as snow, and a few centimetres of snow could build up over the Grampians. So some wintry hazards about first thing for parts of Scotland. A quieter picture for much of England and Wales with hazy sunshine first thing. A cold start for many, although across the southwest as well as parts of West Wales it is relatively mild compared with recent weather. And actually we keep the dry and bright weather throughout much of the day for England and Wales. It gradually pushes north so that the rain and snow fizzles out across central Scotland. It turns drier across the UK, and it's going to be a little less cold in many places compared with recent days. But the true milder air isn't quite here yet. In fact, another spell of rain comes along early Wednesday across western parts of the UK. Drier towards the east, increasingly windy with the wind coming from the south, but there will be some sunshine in the east. And then watch this rise in temperatures by the time we get to the end of the week. In some spots, we could see highs of 15 or 16 Celsius.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's helped.